It's September 20th, 2021. This is Rock. Well, he has become one of the best-known names in Iranian rock music, and his group has recorded songs that can be sung by Persians around the world. Arash Sobhani and his band Kiosk were among the pioneers of Persian indie rock music in the early 2000s and have scored some big hits in the process. Now Arash is a TV producer, a TV presenter, and an activist as well as his work as a musician, but he's just released a new album and related film that is drawing comparisons to the style of Pink Floyd's The Wall. Arash Sobhani joins us for a feature interview. Plus, we have your letters of the week. This is Conversations from, to, and about the Iranian diaspora. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. This is Rook. Hi there, welcome to episode 146 of Rook.
What's so funny?
Because you have business, and you always wait till the microphones are on, and then you're like moving your microphone.
Can I just live my life?
Could you just get set up by the time we are actually recording rather than...
I live by my own rules.
No, it's the microphones are on. We're about to start talking, and then Keon's hitting the table and moving the things. And
ladies and gentlemen, we're keeping all of this.
I hope you're keeping well wherever you're tuning in from around the world. Hello to you from Toronto, Canada. Salam Dustan Aziz. Durud Bashama. Welcome to Rook. You know, I do the whole intro with the music. Most podcasts just start like, okay, here we go. You know, and no one cares about this whole intro that I do. We got the music. I'm timing the words. I write it out.
Beautiful. It's epic. Does anybody listen to it?
You clearly, when I say no one cares, I mean you don't care, Keon. Because first of all, you're typing things through the whole time I'm recording. As soon as we start, and I've got my little thing, you're typing, and then the microphones are on, and sure enough, Keon knocks over her shake and moves the microphone.
Hey. There's a reason she's got the bulldozer title.
Exactly. I live by my title.
The bulldozer, yeah. You should get that tattooed somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
The bulldozer.
I don't have any tattoo, but I'll get that right across my chest.
Arash Sobhani going to be joining me in just a little bit. He's our big feature interview today. Lives in Sweden. Currently, he's been in California, where he's promoting this new album and film project. I'm excited to have Arash on. Shaya, yes. I guess when you were coming up as a musician, he's one of the pioneers of what we would call indie rock or sort of alternative rock music from Iran, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah, they could put Persian lyrics into the Dire Straits style of music.
Right. The Dire Straits. It's another one. Do you even know who Dire Straits are?
I have no idea.
You would know who they are. You would know if you were in Iran. They're another band that's like Pink Floyd. And what's that fucking band that I've never heard of?
Modern Talking.
Modern Talking.
I love Modern Talking.
They're not. Oh my God.
Because of my mom.
You didn't grow up in Iran. How do you like Modern Talking?
It's because of my mom. I don't know. So one of her relatives got her into it.
It is the worst. Whenever I go and say, sometimes I think maybe I was wrong. Iranians love this. Let me go listen to this. It is the worst music. This horrible. I think it's a joke. I think it's a parody. I think they're joking. Like let's do some cheesy Euro pop from the 80s.
Face, no name, no number.
Okay, that's a bad one. But you're my heart. You're my soul.
First of all, I've never heard of this band until my Persian cousin was like, the biggest band ever. Like he thought they were like, the Rolling Stones. You don't know Modern Talking.
I like it.
But Kiosk, and by the way, now we're going to get into the Kiosk.
Oh no,
right? Because Arash Sobhani is from the band. I get Farsi. If we're speaking in Persian, we have to say Kiosk.
Yes.
Right?
I don't like the sound
But
of that.
again, in English, I think you would have to say kiosk, which is the way it's spelled. I'm going to, when I introduce him, I'm going to say kiosk, and then at some point, yeah. I just know, I know that there's Persians listening who are going to say, "In baba in balad nistes." They don't, he doesn't know what he's saying.
They say that in general. So
they
it's
do
okay.
say, well, yeah, you know. Anyway, Arash has been, I mean, he's a musician, and he's written this cinematic musical that we're going to talk about. It's like an album, but it's also got a whole long film attached to it that's kind of half animated. That's why in the intro I was saying in the style of Pink Floyd's The Wall. I mean, it's really cool what he's done. But he's also, folks will know, he's the TV producer of that Persia's Got Talent, and he hosted a show called Replay, kind of a music show on NBC Persia, and basically he's been busy as a beaver.
Sounds like it.
An expression you guys now know. Busy as a beaver. By the way, let me do my formal introductions of the Fabulous Keon and the Captain Reza.
Hello, sir.
And the Groovy Shia.
Hi, Ezra.
Yeah. Now, at the end of the last show, because we were talking about busy as a beaver,
Right.
we were wondering what the Persian word for beaver is. And go ahead, Shia. It's
Reza, actually.
Oh, Reza.
I
Yeah.
said it, yeah. It's Jesus. It's Sage Abi.
Now,
Why is that so funny to you guys?
because for us,
me?
like, we don't know these. Like, last week was the first time we'd heard this, right, Keon? I mean, I don't
water
think.
dog?
Also, because you don't say. Beaver doesn't come up in a lot of Persian conversations.
No.
It's a Canadian animal, you know, or whatever. So Sage Abi, let me just to translate that. Sag is dog, and Abi is actually blue, but it can also mean of water. You know,
of water.
So dog.
Dog water.
Dog of water.
Water dog.
The funny thing for us is, like, could these brilliant Persians, the land of Rumi, could we not come up with a word rather than...
Imagine when the first time they named it. Oh, it looks like a water
It
dog.
is clearly a dog of water. It's a dog of water.
Oh, now I get it why you guys are laughing. Because you guys are translating Farsi.
I've never seen this animal before. What should we call it? It is dog of water.
That's insane.
So it's like the camel, shotor morg, literally like camel chicken.
It's so good. And I don't think Persians, like, they'd just be like, what's wrong with these two? Why are they laughing at this? It's you know, but I think for people like us who grew up outside of Iran, I mean, dog of water.
It's funnier each time.
Oh, man.
You could just see, I mean, you know, like the great thinkers, you know, we must, Reza John, we have to come up with name for this animal. We do not have the, let's see, how about dog of water?
You know what I think it is? I have a theory. I think we don't have, because we don't have beavers in Iran, right? A lot of these animals don't exist, or very few of them. So my assumption is that probably the first time an Iranian saw a beaver, asked whoever was around, what is this animal? And then they were like, a beaver. And it's like, kind of looks like a dog. And it lives in the water. And they're like, yeah. It's like, all right, then we call it...
Yes, we understand where the... Thank you, Reza.
Yes, thank you for that. Very
It looks like a dog and it's in the water. Yes, we understand.
It's like
I like how Reza's like, you see, let me explain this.
You guys are
it looks a bit like a dog and it goes in the water, and that's why they called it a dog. Yes, we get that. We're saying it's funny because it's so literal. It's like there was no creative name for this animal. It was just dog of water.
We also have Asbabi.
Oh, yeah. That's seahorse.
Seahorse.
We have
What's
seahorse.
No, not
What?
seahorse. No,
What's-
that's Asp Daryai.
Oh, Asp Abi کدومشه؟
Asbabi is hippopotamus.
No.
Oh, yeah, he's right. He's right.
Oh
my
God.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
What part of a hippo looks like a horse?
He's right.
Well, it's big, so that's the only reference that...
Horse water.
He's right. He's right. I
Water
totally
horse?
forgot about that. Yeah. Asp Abi.
Wow.
There's basically a bunch of animals of water.
Dude, we only had cats, dogs, and horses. What do you expect?
That is so
Right,
good.
that's right. And you just go through the list. Is it a Gorbe Abi? No. It is a Saga Abi? No. It is Asba Abi.
Oh God.
And then we call seahorse Asp Daryai.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Thank you, Reza. Shaya said that about 3 minutes ago.
Did.
I was reiterating. I don't know. I feel like
We're coming to you on rookmedia.com. Rookmedia.com. It's there that you can link to all of our platforms. You know, the fans of Arash Sobhani who've never heard Rook before, they're just tuning into this episode.
Like, who are these idiots talking about animals?
They spent the first 15 minutes laughing about Saga Abi. It's just so good, Saga Abi. Also, the first time you said it last week, I thought Blue Dog. Like, I wasn't thinking Abi like of water. I was thinking it's the blue dog. Like, blue meaning kind of, and you know, blue is in poetic terms is used to mean sad. So it's the sad dog.
wow, you read way too much into
Saga
it.
Abi. Who will speak for the beaver? The Saga Abi.
That's amazing.
The blue dog. It is at rookmedia.com that you can link to all of our platforms. We're on an ongoing mission to build a new audio-visual encyclopedia of Iranian diaspora identity. We're on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, Castbox. If you want to see visuals with Rook, switch over to YouTube right now or on Instagram at Rook Media. And if you like your Rook descriptions and bulletins in both English and Persian, check us out on Telegram. I was in New York City this weekend.
I was going to ask you, how was that?
I saw our fabulous friend, the great legendary artist Nikki Nojumi. He has an exhibition there in Chinatown. Go to Nikki Nojumi's Instagram page or his website, and it'll explain where the exhibition is. It's really worth seeing his stuff in person, and it was lovely to see him as well. But I want to say on Saturday night I went to Ray's Candy Store.
Oh.
Yeah. Now Ray has had this candy store at if you go down to the East Village in New York City, a little close to where I lived for a few months once. It's literally Avenue A and 7th Street. Yeah, it would be 7th Street and Avenue A, right, in the East Village. That's what they used to call Alphabet City, right? So 7 and A, there's the Ray's Candy Store is where you can get an ice cream. You get your soft ice cream. You get a smoothie, like a shake, you know, or you can get, you know, donuts, like things like that, little candy, chocolatey things. Mostly it's ice cream and soft ice cream and stuff like that. This place is an institution. It's been there for years. The East Village has been, you know, it used to be like kind of the cool artisty punk kind of place, and now it's still got an artist vibe to it, but the East Village is certainly gentrified. All through the early 2000s, this Starbucks has started to open, and, you know, but this little place has been there throughout it all. And Ray, the owner, has been there, and he's still there.
He's still there?
And Ray is, I think he's 88 years old now.
No.
But now, why am I telling this story? Because Ray is actually Asghar. Asghar Kahraman. Wow. Yeah. And Asghar, you know, about 50 years ago, I guess he left, or he deserted the Iranian army and came to the United States and started this candy store, which I think has been around for almost 50 years, like more. And sure enough, there he was behind the counter on a Saturday night. Ray Asghar still working, you know, still, and he kind of has this like young. I mean, it's, to be honest, it's kind of chaos in there. I mean, he's 88, you know, he's sort of like, and you know, he's what do you want? What do you know? And he's kind of, but it was great to see Ray there. He is, and so. If you're ever in New York and you go down to the East Village and you go down to 7 and A, I mean, New Yorkers will know this place, but you'll see Ray still there, Asghar Kahraman. And about 10 years ago, he finally became a U.S. citizen, and it was there were articles written about him. I mean,
after all these years,
he was 40 years.
It took him many years, and I think it had something to do with the fact that he was a military person or something like that. Like he got sort of pardoned by Reagan or something. I mean, there was a whole deal with him. It did take him 40 years. There was, you know, there's articles around. Finally, you know, Ray from Ray's Candy Store is a U.S. citizen. So anyway, yeah, it's a lovely story. You know, we talk a lot about Iranians who are newer immigrants to the diaspora, and we celebrate them and talk about them. Here's somebody who came many years ago, and who, for the most part, folks wouldn't even know his. I mean, his name's Ray, right? And he's kind of, you know, he's got a bit of an accent and stuff, but there he is in his baseball cap. And while I was there, there, I was getting a vanilla, like people. There was actually a few people who wanted vanilla ice cream, and the kid who was working there was like, we don't have any more. And then Ray /Asghar/kiosk said, no, we have. Go get the, and then he climbed up gingerly, like, got up to the top to fill the machine with some cream to get the vanilla ice cream. Yeah, it was lovely.
Incredible. Well, two things. One, you made the same impression as you make of me. Asghar sounds a lot like me. Secondly, he's the original.
No, he has more of
Candyman.
accent. He's what you want? Vanilla, okay, like that. You don't
if
have
I had
that,
a thicker accent,
no,
probably,
you're just
that's
more
what
like
it
this.
sounds-
Yeah. But thank you.
Got
yeah.
it.
I'll work on that. What's the second thing?
Second thing I was gonna say, he's the original Candyman. I love it.
Ray's Candy Store.
Ray's
yeah.
Candy Store.
Yeah. And by the way, Reza, do you know how they got Saga Abi? they thought the beaver looks like a dog, and the beaver would go in the water, so they called it the dog of water.
Oh my god. What a culture.
Working with a Mensa, with a PhD over here.
I mansplained it to you.
You certainly did. Hey, a shout out to Kati Kavandi and Kati Kavandi Immigration Services, Inc. Kavandi.ca is the website. Kati is a certified immigration consultant and the CEO of her company. She's a very well-reviewed resource for those wanting to come to Canada. She's got offices in Toronto and Tehran. So Kati is an immigrant from Iran herself, learned the ropes of the process of coming to Canada, and has tremendous knowledge in immigration procedures and legislation. Her company acts as the client's advocate before the courts, government officials, IRB, IRCC offices. She makes herself and her team available throughout the whole process. And of course, she does this in Persian and in English. You can find her at kavandi.ca. We're linking to that on our screen and on the description, whatever platform you're listening to on this episode. You can find it there. Kavandi.ca, Kati Kavandi. Also find her on Instagram at kati.kavandi.immigration. And a shout out to myterms.ca. Anita and Arash Fazalipour, their life partners and business partners, and the founders of myterms.ca, Keon. You know it by now, myterms.ca.
I'm familiar with them.
That's right. Mortgage company from Ontario, Canada. Really good record with myterms.ca, focusing on the service aspect of the mortgage business, and they are very well reviewed online as well. They specialize in multi-million-dollar transactions through institutional and private sources and represent a handful of wealthy private investors who focus on $1 to $10 million first or second mortgages. If you are a builder, developer, or a mortgage broker looking to team up with a great source, this company is what you need. Check them out online at myterms.ca or give them a call at 416-MyTerms if you're in Canada, 416-MyTerms, and they make it a big priority to give back to the Persian community as well. Thanks to Arash and Anita Fazilipour, myterms.ca. Today is, by the time people are hearing it, today was, election day in Canada.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Right?
Did you guys vote?
I did.
I'm voting as soon as we end the show.
Good.
Yeah.
Actually, you can vote in the building.
I
believe.
know,
Yeah.
but
How
I can't
convenient.
because I don't live here.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
People who live in
yeah.
this area, like Captain Reza.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, Shaya, you probably can't vote just
No,
yet, right?
no.
Would you be excited to be able to vote in Canada?
Yes, and also I love voting.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh.
okay.
Because it's a kind of social practice to contribute to the society. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. It's kind of a passive form of it. It's 1x every 4 years or something like that. But still, it is political participation, and there are people who argue that these elections that we have are skewed as well here. But certainly, to have an election that means something in terms of the results, rather than something that's rigged or
Yes.
problematic the way it is back home,
Yes.
the other home in Iran, that is has got to be gratifying. So this election, for those people not who are listening and aren't in Canada, it's kind of one of those that's a bit of a referendum on our Prime Minister, on Justin Trudeau. You basically vote based on how you feel about Trudeau, and he kind of called this early election, it felt sort of opportunistic to some
Right.
people, that he was like, okay, maybe I could, because there's a minority government, maybe they'll get a majority and they still may, or, by the time people hear this, the results will be out there. But I wanted to say, it's still weird to me that Trudeau, because so many people have talked about Trudeau in this election campaign, that Trudeau has come to mean Justin, because when I was a kid, the prime minister was Trudeau, but it was Justin's dad. It was Pierre Elliott Trudeau, like up until 1984, for 16 years, the prime minister. So, basically, if you were born before that, the only thing you ever knew as prime minister is that guy, is Pierre Trudeau. Yeah. And Iranians are a lot of immigrants, but people like my dad loved Pierre Trudeau.
So I guess we can already assume who you're going to vote for.
You cannot assume that, and I never say who I vote for, and I will tell you that I have voted for every party in my years in
Green
Canada.
Party too?
And even the Green Party ones. Yeah. I mean, I've always voted based on what I believe in, but also based on the candidate. And there's sometimes when you're in a riding where your vote may not make a difference. In other words, you know who's going to get elected, and you can use your vote to support a candidate that you particularly like, or something like that. I mean, there's different ways different reasons people vote. So no, you really actually can't guess, Keon. On the other hand, I think I have a sense of who you would vote for.
I think everybody has a sense of who I'd vote for.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
As he's going on about the Trudeau.
No, listen. I mean, I'm not suggesting that all Persians support the Liberals or should, and there's a lot of folks who are very angry at both Justin Trudeau and Pierre Trudeau at things that they really did that people don't believe in and all that. This is a simple story about my dad as an immigrant, but appreciating the multiculturalism policy in 71, etc.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's funny, the fact that Trudeau is still popular amongst a lot of newcomer Iranians.
Which Trudeau?
Justin.
Oh yeah,
like Justin. The Trudeau family. Justin. No, Justin is very popular amongst a lot of newcomer Iranians, and like you go on, especially when it comes to immigration, like people love him.
It killed the vibe, didn't we? Talking about let's get out of this conversation somehow.
Help us here.
Jesus.
It was better when we were talking about Saga Avi.
It keeps getting worse.
Yeah.
This parachute is a knapsack.
No one's gonna be left for Arash Sobhani. They're too busy writing angry letters at us.
Yeah, really.
Speaking of letters, we have some letters coming up later.
Yeah, I will say today's letter of the week is like pretty gold.
Oh,
honestly.
All right.
I loved reading it.
Well, we will get to that and more. The fabulous Keon, Groovy Shaya, and Captain Reza. Stick around. Let's get to our featured guest. My featured guest today is an Iranian musician and TV host and producer who's played a role in breaking the mold of what is defined as the Iranian sound. He has been the producer of Persia's Got Talent, the man behind the recent music TV series Replay, and was the host of the popular satirical news program on VOA Persia On 10. But Arash Sobhani is undoubtedly best known to Iranians across the diaspora and in Iran as the lead singer and guitarist of the Persian rock band Kiyusk. The band and Arash have been known for their catchy melodies and sharp, smart, satirical lyrics that highlight the paradoxes of Iranian society and its political dysfunction. Arash was born in Iran. He got his MA in architecture, but music was his destiny. And when prevented from performing in public or publishing his music in Tehran, he formed Kiyusk and moved to the United States in 2005 to release Kiyusk's first album, Ordinary Man. Kiyusk continued their musical journey thereafter. Arash has recorded 10 albums with Kiyusk and now has created perhaps his biggest cultural project yet. He has just released Payan Shirin, Sweet Destiny, the first ever musical in Iranian cinema. Take a listen to this.
میشه وقت عمل چغنده رو ماست شد یه روز چپ شد و روز بعد راست شد هنر واسه هنر سیاست رو نفهمی چشما رو بست و هیچی رو ندید ماه پشت ابر میمونه ماه پشت ابر میمونه ماه پشت ابر میمونه ماه پشت ابر میمونه نمیمونه ماه پشت ابر نمیمونه.
Little taste of Arash Sobhani and Kiyusk and a song called Ma from the soundtrack of the new animated and live-action film Sweet Destiny. The film premiered on VOA on August 20th. It's now available online. The band will donate all proceeds from the film to the Iran Human Rights Organization, with the primary aim to eradicate capital punishment in Iran. And right now, Arash Sobhani joins me from San Francisco, California today. Hello, sir.
Hi, Gian. So good to be here.
Nice to have you on the program, my friend. You've been a busy guy. Persia's Got Talent, Replay, concerts, appearances, a new album, a film project. I know you were back in Sweden, then in London, now in California. How are you coping with this breakneck schedule?
Yeah, I mean, given the situation in the world with everything going on, I mean, everything's on stall in a way. We managed to have a kind of a productive year in 2021, and especially in 2020. Keeping myself busy, especially with TV projects. But this album was something that was in the making for quite a few years, actually. It took us 4 years to finish it. But I'm excited that, we managed to do this all while, nothing much was going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that you're an A-type personality. You you didn't use the pandemic as a chance to rest.
No. It was actually the best time to catch up with the things you wanted to finish.
It's funny. The last time you were on Rook, it was for our Pink Floyd special, and now you've gone and made, without being sort of melodramatic about it, the truth is it's the closest thing to The Wall that we have had in Persian music. I mean, this is what we used to call a rock opera, in the tradition of the band The Who or something. The sheer ambition of the project is audacious for me. What was the precipitant behind not just wanting to make a new record, but then to make it as a film as well, and to have a concept behind it?
I think Pink Floyd is a good starting point, actually. I think we discussed how influential Pink Floyd has been on Iranian musicians, saying that, when you grow up, when you're a kid and you start your band, when you watch The Wall, that's the first thing you want to do. You always think like, can I do that someday? Can I do something close to that? So that's always in the back of your head, and the challenge is really, really attractive. But the experience we had from the previous album, having a concept album and telling a story, as opposed, having an album as one continuity rather than, selection of few songs, it doesn't make sense anymore. People do singles these days. And so we thought, it's probably time that we give it a shot, because the last album was a trial. It was really a delightful experience, and I really enjoyed it. It was based on a true story, though. And this time I thought, I could be more daring and try to do it. Maybe we can do it and pull it off, and we did.
It is everything that people are not doing these days in the musical marketplace, and for business reasons they don't do it. The marketplace is now about digital downloads, singles, as you just said, quick hits. A concept album with a film attached to it that's not really about pop hits or a big thing out of the box. I mean, it's just not the current business model. It may be for a band like Radiohead who can bankroll it, but did it concern you that you were doing something that is definitely swimming against the tide of the current culture?
Yes, I think in a way I was aware of the risk we were taking. And the consequences, obviously, as you said, there was no financial justification for a project like this. And it was just attractive. And we just felt like we should do it. We can do it now. Because we had enough talents and friends and people who were willing to help that made it possible. And I thought, while we have these resources, if you don't make use of it, and if you don't get everybody involved and do a project like this, we may never get a chance to do it again. And we were very lucky that we were associated with all these people who chipped in or helped us financially or with their talents and what have you, to be able to pull it off. So I guess we were kind of aware that this is not a financial project.
Did you know you wanted to make a film and you wrote towards it, or did you write the album and then say, "Fuck, this has got to be a film"?
No, we started, we wanted to have a rock opera film, and we wanted to have a story. So while we were writing the story, we kind of came up with sections, chapters, as you say, for different chapters for the whole story when we had the structure of the story, and then we realized where we needed songs and what type of songs could fit in. So it kind of evolved parallel.
I mean, it's got to feel, you've been so identified more recently with being the TV guy, whether it's on air or behind the scenes as a producer, as a business person almost, as an executive, that I've got to think that it's got to feel somehow liberating or exciting in some visceral sense to be putting out creative musical content again. We'll get into your TV stuff later, but tell me about the emotions behind putting this out.
It's really interesting, what you're pointing out right now, because I think to me it's always about telling a story or to sharing your emotions when you write a piece of music. And I've noticed when I talk too much in a period of time with people and open up too much, I kind of vent out my feelings, and then I don't feel like writing anymore. When I keep it to myself, I feel like it just bursts out in forms of songs. So when you're doing all these different projects, you feel like a lot of your energy and a lot of the things you want to say or do or explain or express, they kind of come out. And then when you sit down to write a song, you feel like it just doesn't feel original anymore to you. So to keep that balance has always been a problem for me ever since I started doing TV.
That's so interesting. You should say that. That resonates for me. It's like if I sit down to write a song now, like I've said it all on Rook last week or so. I don't have anything. Exactly. I got nothing left, right?
I'm repeating myself. Yeah.
Right. So you have to somehow portion off or create boundaries around what you do to preserve your creative well.
It's kind of dangerous, because you start to, after a while you start to realize, because people like us, we're not just these days we're on social media too, and you think of something funny, you want to tweet that, but if you keep that and use it in one of your lines for a song, maybe it can work better, but you don't know what to do. So you start to develop different characters, you become different personalities. It's okay, things like this, when it excites me in this way, these are good for a TV show or for a tweet or for a post on Instagram. But if it excites me in this way, then my character, tells me to, maybe I can use it in a song. You know what I'm trying to say?
But being the executive producer of Persia's Got Talent is surely not a substitute for writing a love song, is it?
No, it's not. But I think a lot of your mental capacity and your creativity gets sucked into something else, and I don't know. I feel like your focus, when you start to think outside the box, you're focused more on the TV project than songwriting, if you're into it, because TV is always like a fire,
Yes.
You have to be there 100%.
and it's always in the moment. I find that media, broadcast, TV, radio, it's always about today, whereas music that you write can be about the future or something that people are going to hold on to.
Exactly. But you feel that at that moment, you want to kind of preserve that moment and share it with people later. And again, I think you start to develop different personalities within yourself. That's the danger I'm starting to feel.
Really? And how would you describe your different personalities? What are the different personalities of Arash Sobhani?
I become more, I don't know. I never tried to sit down and kind of list,
Here's the chance.
Yeah, exactly. So on top of my head, I feel like when I'm working on TV projects, I've become very, 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 very focused, and I kind of lose track of time and very objective. But when I'm writing a song, I become very, very let go and take my time and try to feel the song really, and don't have a deadline for myself. I don't try to finish at a certain time, and it's just very opposite feelings.
Can I take a stab at it? I think the music, I mean, notwithstanding the politics, we'll get to the politics, but I think the music is the romantic side of you.
Yes, I hope so.
Hosting Replay is not the romantic side of you. It's,
no.
although it's a job well done. Let me ask you a couple more questions about this latest project in the film before we get into more of your background. If for people who watch it, and they can go see it online now. It's a wild mix of animation and real images. It's almost like, well, I mean, to a certain extent, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. I mean, I name-checked Radiohead earlier, but it reminds me of a Radiohead video, except it's an hour long. Who came up with the aesthetic for this?
It was a process, I think. We started from old picture photography, a very old image picture that was taken 150 years ago, and we wanted to base that as our background and recreate that. So animation techniques we discussed, and then after a lot of back and forth and kind of studying a lot of different techniques, we thought using old photos and images of Iran and kind of distorting them in a way like the cartoons. A lot of the artist Ardeshir Mohassas has a lot of cartoons that have those characters, or the closest thing maybe in America would be the Gonzo, type of journalism that the type of cartoons they do, how they distort the characters. So we thought we can do that with real images because of the quality of the images from 100 years ago. They were not that good to kind of blend them in. So it was a process between myself and Kajart, the production company that did the animation. We went back and forth and we came up with ideas. But I sketched out the characters. I had the faces in my head. So I sketched them out and I told them, okay, I think this guy should look like this. He has a beard, he has a long hair, or whatever. And
did you literally sketch them out? You can do that?
Yes, yeah, I have the sketches. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, you are an architect, so I guess that would be you know how to draw.
Yeah, but it was cartoons. It was just to kind of communicate more. It wasn't a decent sketch, but they got the picture.
There's a political impetus and narrative to the album and the film, and the proceeds are going to a human rights organization. It occurs to me, I mean, with Iran, where do we start? There are so many issues when it comes to contemporary Iran. Talk to me about why capital punishment was where you wanted to focus this.
Looking at that picture, looking at the original picture, you see a lot of the bad things that the society has been carrying with it, this culture has been carrying with it in the last 100, 200 years. And that really, really kind of struck me in a way that I couldn't get it out of my head. And back when I was doing the political satire show, actually, I would get a lot of calls, emails from people inside the country that they would discuss their problems because they thought I have a position, I'm in front of the camera, I can talk about their problems. And a lot of times you get emails, people, my brother's in prison, he's going to be executed in 2 weeks, can you help? And Iran has one of the highest numbers of capital punishment in the world. So yes. All of Iranian families, one way or another, know someone or a family that's been affected by this vicious punishment. And you don't know how to start talking about this, how to tell people, how to tell the society that this is wrong. This is definitely wrong, and we need to really take it serious. We can't keep killing innocent people like this. And so that's where it came from. I think it was very personal for me in a way.
There is an execution we witness in the film. I mean, it's not a spoiler alert because it's the hat is tipped early on in the film, but we don't really know or find out what the crime is, and we never find out. Why is that important?
It's important because it's not about justice. The whole circus is not about justice. It's just about showing power. It's about manipulation. It's about fear. It's about everything but justice. So it really doesn't matter who this guy is and what he's done. So purposefully, I don't even get into that subject.
I thought maybe it was a commentary on the fact that at this stage, it seems like people are executed for such absurd or trumped up reasons that the crime actually, the quote unquote crime becomes irrelevant.
In a way, the song that you just played, Ma, has a verse that says, the convict is just like you all of you. His only sin was that he was caught. His only crime was that he was caught, and he's just similar to everybody else. So in a way, that's true. I mean, I don't know if you heard or not, but few months ago, they executed someone in Mashhad for drinking alcohol. It was the second time that he was being picked up. So according to Sharia, he should have been executed. So that's what they did. And I have drank alcohol. You drank alcohol. So all of us are potential victim of this vicious punishment. So it's a big thing.
You know, the film has this. It's such an eclectic journey through this film because it's quite dark, and there's the historical images mixed with the animation. Then there's this moment about halfway through where we look like we're watching a Western ad or video. It's this satirical kind of song. It's actually an English song on the album called Half Salad. Let me just play a little bit of this.
دیشب رفتم به هالیوود جای همتون خالی بود بوی علف و بوی دود کباب مناب تو بسمون میکن کجایی لاس وگاس شهر عشق واصفانس موجی نیومد کربلاس بیاره دنبال دلار است بعد میگرده میریم اسکی خط میزنیم با ویسکی ویلای آقا مقداد بیستر یا بلفزهای هیتلر
Little taste of the song Half Salad from the new Arash Sobhani and Kiosk film and album called Payana Shirin Sweet Destiny. I mean, that song feels a bit like an outlier, not just because it's English, but it's very satirical in terms of what the message. Tell me about that song.
Yeah, it's about these characters, you know, like back to the original picture we were talking about. When I was looking at these faces in that scene, you see them today, you know them, you kind of know who they are around you. And it's about this group of Iranians who live outside of Iran. They're somehow connected to the government or the regime, so they make a lot of money back home. So they're okay with the system there, and they don't mind the oppression. They don't mind people being poor. But they spend their money outside. They go to Vegas. They are in Hollywood. They go to Whistler to ski. And, you know, so they're happy with the status quo. So they're not complaining. And the double standard they have when they're outside of the country and when they're inside the country is what this song is about.
You know, how do we know who those people are? That's the eternal question. Whenever there's a wealthy Iranian, I mean, you know, people say, oh, well, he's with the regime, you know, or something. I mean, how are we supposed to deconstruct that?
I mean, I know you can't really generalize and say whoever has money is obviously with the regime, because that's not the case. But you're in Canada, you're in Toronto, you know a lot. I mean, you see a lot of them every day on the street.
Of course. I mean, and not to mention that this has been broken down. There's academics who've talked about the fact that there are now thousands of agents of the Iranian government or regime that are in the diaspora around the world. So this is, I mean, this is just a fact at this point. But I'm certainly not somebody who can necessarily discern who is what.
I mean, there are a lot of those people. You don't need to be officially connected to the regime, but you can kind of see from the political views they have, how they behave inside and outside the country, like how they try to not pay taxes here, but take advantage of the social welfare or what have you, and then they go back in Iran and then again take advantage of the system there. So it's all about those people who are like half salad, half branch, which is rice. And they're half and half, but you know, it's a mixture of. It's about opportunists.
The status quo kind of it benefits them. Why, you know, there's
exactly.
why shake things up?
They don't want to change anything,
right.
But they also want to have the benefit of the whatever is good here in the West.
I'm gonna come back to that and the impetus that you clearly feel to speak out on issues as opposed to just enjoying the half salad, half berenj. But let me ask you about one of the themes of the film and the album that seems clear. It's the identity and the voice of the individual and the lack of expression of that in Iran. You've said that individuality does not really exist in contemporary Iran and in fact in the Middle East. What do you mean by that?
I think when you break it down, at the end of the day, it's about freedom and liberty in its naked definition. And you're not allowed to be a lot of things. a lot of things in the Middle East. You're not allowed, I mean, from your sexual orientation, the music you listen to, how you want to dress, a lot of those things. And, you know, all the way down to what you believe in, what you want to read, and what you want to watch or listen to. So it's all about these basic freedoms. When they take that away from you, you lose your identity as an individual, and you have to belong. In order to survive, you have to belong to a club. You have to be part of a group. And that's what we see today. I don't believe all these little, you know, 16-year-old, 17-year-old kids we see on TV in Afghanistan picking up a gun. They know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. They just need to have to belong to a group to survive. And they don't know about, you know, radical Islamism. They probably don't know how to read or write. So that's the problem we see across Middle East. And I think that's a big deal. And it comes, and it's maybe a cultural thing. Maybe we should start talking about that. Maybe by respecting people's differences in every way. I mean, you and I might have political different points of view, but we might support the same football team or things like that.
Right.
It's really comes down to that I see it. And I think camera and recording audio and things like that, they started to kind of give us the tool to start to, so we can create some sort of a very, very tight space for ourselves to define. You know, when you go on Instagram and you see all these kids try to create their own identity through social media. And I want to trace it back to the first time that people were photographed or were recorded. That's when they realize they have a voice, they have an image. So it's kind of about those things.
It's a difficult one because I can't think, I think anybody who's listening to this would understand exactly what you mean, especially if they're of Iranian background and thinking about the context of contemporary Iran, that the suppression or the boundaries that are set naturally sap the individuality out and create this kind of this herd. And at the same time, I feel tentative about saying that because one doesn't want to undercut the individuals. I mean, the young fashion designer in Shiraz who's doing her best to be an individual and doing some really interesting work in Iran today, right? Isn't that individuality?
That is, and I think that's actually something that is the struggle. That is the form of a rebellion in a way. These are the people who are trying to dictate or to teach the society that we should start to respect each other's differences and we should be different. It's good to be different. You know what I'm trying to say? I'm not trying to say that there are not people who are not trying to do this.
Yes. No, I think I'm sure people understand what you're trying to say. How much of an individual were you? I mean, take me back. What was Arash like? If I met you as the young guy studying architecture at the Isfahan University of Art, who would I be meeting?
A lot of things come to play when you try to look back at these things. Like if the internet was back then, it would have been totally different. Arash Sobhani, of course. How much exposure did I get to new ideas, new things? You know, you've heard about this very interesting experiment that I read about. I don't know if I can explain it correctly, but it's about the mice, and they put them in a maze. It's the same maze, and they track their dreams. You know, don't ask me how. The brain wavelength, however, and because this mouse is only experiencing the same maze, he dreams of the same maze every night. When they try him on two different mazes in his dreams, he starts to create a new maze in his head, which is not the maze number 1 or maze number 2.
Wow.
So what I'm trying to say is that when you don't get exposure to what's outside, what else is out there, this is the only option you have. You can be either like your neighbor to your right or your neighbor to your left. That's the only options you get. And
was that true of you? You weren't a big dreamer because you didn't have that exposure. You didn't have the internet as a little kid?
I did have some exposure to some extent, and I think I was in an underground music band when I was in high school. I tried to be different as much as I could, but I'm sure if the resources we have today, the technology was there today, I would have been much more different.
What did it? I mean, we're around the same age, and so I was in I don't know if I would call it an underground. We were playing sort of the Doors and Rolling Stones songs and stuff, but I was in a band in high school. I mean, what was it like to be in an underground band, and I'm guessing Tehran, as a teenager for you?
It was amazing. I mean, it was just when I look back at some of the pictures that we still managed to get out and keep, it's just an amazing feeling. Looking, I mean, I feel kind of sad for ourselves looking back now to see it when I see what kids our age were doing outside Iran at the same time. But at the same time, it's really, really amazing feeling that we did it. We were recording analog. The war was going on. It was a really difficult time.
Where would you even get the stuff? I mean, this is like, I guess it's the 80s, right? So you're in a basement and you're a teenager. Like, how did you have access to a guitar amp and all of that?
Yeah, I was a lucky one. I had a guitar amp and a guitar that I brought back because I lived in the US before that for a while. So I brought back some stuff with me, but we would go and rent and borrow, actually, because there was this group of Iranian musicians, older generation, who had experience. They knew how to record. They had equipment. They would let us borrow, and they would really encourage us. A lot of those guys really, really helped us a lot, teaching us a lot. Letting us borrow things from them when we had recordings and rehearsals. It was really amazing feeling to when I look back. It was interesting.
Was the architecture thing, was that the traditional Persian kid who feels like he has to go into something respectable rather than play rock music, or were you genuinely excited about architecture?
It started as you have to be, of course, go to become an engineer. My dad is an engineer, so that was the thing. I didn't want to be a dentist, so it was a mixture of both, and it was a good solution for me because I enjoyed studying architecture and it kept my parents happy at the same time.
Arash, when did you actually start to dream, back to the mice in the maze, that your passion for music could actually be something that might become your life? I really never thought that it would be something that I would do as a full-time. I never thought that I'd be labeled as a musician or guitar player or songwriter. None of these. I never thought of that. But I was always really fascinated by how... Wait, why didn't you think that?
It just never occurred to me. I don't know why. I mean, even when I was 8th grade, I was in the US, and I even played here with a band. We had 3 people just jamming. Even back then when I was in the US, and there was the opportunity to, I mean, people here can dream, right? So even back then, I never thought I'd be a musician. And when I went back to Iran, obviously it was really not an option for obvious reasons. But the power that the music gives you, and you can say things that people understand without you having to say a lot of other things, really fascinated me. And that was in Iran. That was when I started to write Farsi. I never thought about writing in Farsi because I always thought, rock music is a music that is done in English. You don't listen to rock.
Right.
Brazilian.
Actually, we had that conversation when I was first time I interviewed Erfan about being a rapper when he was first starting, and guys like Hichkas, no one had actually rapped in Persian before, so they were kind of looking at each other going, is this allowed? Like, is this still rap if we're doing it in Farsi? So it occurs to me that would be, to a certain extent, the same in some strands of rock music. I mean, obviously there were rock bands in the 70s, predating the post-revolutionary crackdown and all that, but in terms of the kind of music you would end up playing and pioneering to a certain extent, there really was no blueprint, right?
No, actually, that's the point. Because first of all, I think rap is much easier to do in Farsi than a rock song, because you have to have a melody. That's difficult. It doesn't really sit well with the Farsi language, with Persian. And I think the experiences we had in rock before the revolution was we were just learning how to do this. And by the time we got to Feridun Furugi and Kuru Sharmai, when it was kind of like smooth and natural, then we had the revolution. So it never got to the point that the lyrics sits well. At the same time, there's a message. At the same time, the message relates to what rock is about. It's not about flower. It's not about how beautiful you are. It's about, like, I'm angry, fuck the system, things like that.
Right.
And we never got to that point. And I think that's why I always thought that Farsi is not the right language for rock and roll. And when I started to do it and not take it seriously, that's when I started to get feedback. And that was when I thought, okay, I like this thing.
Feedback from whom?
I started writing songs for other people, but obviously those songs had to be approved by the government, so they were not really. There was no message to it. It was just like basic stuff. But when I started to write for myself, and I said, let's try this, let's give it a try, and just say whatever you want, and I would play it at parties, and from my musician friends and the feedback I got from them. And you know, inside you, when you're doing something that's right, you know, you feel like you don't even care if people like it or not. You feel like, okay, this feels good. This feels right. And that's when I thought, I like this thing, and I think I can do a lot of things with this.
What was the band you had with Hooman Javid? Was it Raza Shab or
Raza Shab?
Yeah, tell me about Raza Shab in the early 2000s.
Yeah, that was a interesting time. I mean, it was like just about the time that Khatami became president, and there was talk of reforms and the new generation and all of that good stuff, and they kind of started to loosen up a little bit. The regime, they started because there was so many young people just coming out of university. They were demanding a lot more. There was satellites. People knew what was going on outside the internet and all of that. Anyway, and so they kind of laxed a little bit. You could do concerts and you could record albums, and music was a little bit more tolerated by the government. And we decided to do this band. We had a band when I was in high school called Tatar 2, which what we were talking about. We would borrow stuff from people around. But this was a legitimate project. We thought, okay, we'll do a band. We go after to get permission. We'll be a decent band. We go perform. You know, we get permissions and perform, do the paperwork and everything. So that's how we went ahead. And it was me, it was Ramin Behna and Shahruz Molai. And then we brought in Hooman and Farzan to sing for us because none of us were singers. And we did one of the very first rock concerts after the revolution, maybe. And it was an amazing experience.
You know, I was thinking about your the big move that you make, and big in terms of not just your personal story, but the launch of Kiosk. Which I'm just going to, for the sake of this interview from now on, called Kiosk because it sounds better in English. And I remember previously one time you had said it's okay, you could just say kiosk because it sounds wrong either way. When I'm speaking English, if I say kiosk, it sounds like what's this guy saying? And I know for Persians when I say kiosk, they try and correct me. So let's just say kiosk for now. But the launch of that band in a big way coincides with the move to America, and that's 2005. And I've been thinking about that, going, okay, so Khatami 2003, the reforms, for better or for worse, ostensible reforms, etc., the opening. Why would you leave in 2005? And I'm wondering if it was the realization that those reforms, I mean, I know Ahmadinejad gets elected in 2005, but tell me what the precipitant was for leaving at that point.
By 2001, I would say I knew that I wanted to leave. It didn't take me long after Khatami was elected to realize that this is fake. But I couldn't leave then. I had to finish my army service and then apply for visas and do the things and immigration and things. And I actually applied for immigration to Canada. But when 2005 happened, then I just knew that there was no point in staying even one more day. I couldn't stand it. I mean, the minute that I woke up, and I remember I was staying with it because I was going back and forth between the US and Iran back then. My parents were living in America and I had a green card, so I could come here and go back. And I was undecided, what to do. I had a very good job in Iran and I really liked, being with friends and my job and everything. But I was staying with a friend. I woke up in the morning and he was checking his computer and he was smoking a cigarette like 7 a.m. And he said, fuck, Ahmadinejad won. And I said, okay. The first phone call I made was to my travel agency, and he said, okay, just confirm the flight. I'm leaving. You realize you don't have more time to waste.
Did you know at that point when you were leaving that you're probably not going to return?
Because I was going back and forth a lot in the last year. I probably went back and forth 3 times. Somebody very important to me back then, who was my boss, I was working with, told me, at some point you just have to make a decision, not look back, and either stay, don't look back, or go and don't look back. And when I decided to go, I told myself, think of it as there's a chance that you may never come back. But I was hopeful that it wouldn't be that bad. I always thought that, they won't last this long, and I'm not a criminal. I can always come back and visit, but things didn't work out the way I thought.
Yeah. What were the emotions of landing in America at that point, despite the fact that you'd come back and forth, as you say, you're not unfamiliar with the States, so it's not like you have trouble finding your way around. But knowing that you've made this move now, as your boss says or your friend says, you do it and don't look back. How would you describe the emotions of that time for you?
It was, I mean, you miss a lot of stuff. Every morning that I woke up, for like at least 30 seconds, it would take me 30 seconds to realize I'm not still in Iran. And that took for more than a year. Every single morning I would wake up and I would be worried about traffic or about being late for a certain meeting that was happening in Tehran. So that's how much I was attached to the life that I had in Tehran. But I think having the experience to live in the US and knowing how it works here, it's easy. I think it's one of the easiest transitions to move to Canada or the US for us Iranians rather than anywhere else. I think it's not that difficult. It is still a process. It's still not something that...
Sorry, why is that? Why is it easier to move here than, say, Sweden?
Well, language is one thing, and the fact that everybody here is one way or another immigrant.
An immigrant,
you don't feel that you don't belong. It's a lot of those things. A lot of those little things that makes you feel comfortable. You don't feel that you don't belong here.
I mean, you didn't move to Kentucky, clearly, but
no, exactly. Yeah, that's true.
You put out the not that there's anything wrong with Kentucky, of course. You put out the first album in 2005, Kiosk album. I want to actually play something off the second album, Love of Speed, Ishq Surat. It really starts to put you guys on the map at this point. Let me play a taste of the title track from that record, which I believe, if we've got the right edit of it, name checks me, or at least a car that has my name. So let's just play a bit of Ishq Surat.
قدرت عشق قدرت مدرنیته یه سنت تو محور شرارت ژیان و عشق سرعت مسکن رنج درد به صورت قرص و گرد شام و نهار نداری جاش میخوریم کیک زن انتخابای تستی ازدواجای قسطی 2000 ته گنجه بود فرستادیم فلسطین موفقیت تضمینی موزیک زیرزمینی دکتر قلب نمیخوان جراح فک و بینی غیرت سیب زمینی توسعه سبک چینی دموکراسی دینی پیتزا یا قرمه سبزی.
Such a good song. I remember the first time I heard that, I was so excited that I've been name checked by a cool rock band, Iranian rock band, and then I realized it's the old shit car again that you're actually referencing. It's such a cool sound that you guys develop by this point. What can you tell me about this period for Kiosk?
It was this album was very special to me because when I left Iran, came to the US, I didn't know how to make a new album. First of all, I was very, very lucky. We were very lucky that the first album came out right when YouTube started and iTunes started. So we didn't really have to worry about finding producers in LA or stuff like that. So we could actually release an album. There was Iranian.com around, so people started to talk about it. And so internet helped us a lot. But the second album, I was here and I didn't have any money and I didn't know any studios. And a group of people approached me who had got to know my music through the first album. And they said, okay, when is the next album coming out? And I said, I don't know. I don't know how to do this here because I'd have to have like a home studio and I haven't thought about it really. I had the songs. I had a lot of songs, but I was busy just settling in. And they offered to help. And that's when I went to Toronto, and with Ali, we recorded it there. So when it came out, and the music video was very, very slick and nice. And when it was published, it got a lot of attention and everything. I was really excited about the feedback that I got. And I realized that I can keep doing this outside of the country. And that's when the first concert came about, right after this album was published. So it brings back a lot of good memories for me. It's about where we started to kind of come out of the darkness and just get on stage and perform.
You're also at this point a bona fide lead singer. I mean, when you were describing Raza Shab, which would have only been a few years earlier in Tehran, you were saying I wasn't a singer. I wasn't the. How did you develop the the balls to decide, okay, I'm going to sing and I'm going to do it in my Knopfler-esque style?
Yeah, I mean, I used to do English songs at parties or with friends and cover bands, things like that. But like you said, Dire Straits, Mark Knopfler, Dylan, things like that. But Iranian music doesn't really like the sound of this kind of. They really need you to scream, to have a big range, and I always wanted to find a singer for the band. Nobody would want to sing the songs, and this is a true story. When we were doing the first concert in San Francisco, it was in Great American Music Hall, and we had few musicians. The only person who knew me from before were the bass player and the drummer from Iran, which I had played with them before in Iran, but the rest of the band were new. And as we were huddling on backstage, I just looked around and I told them, guys, by the way, do you know this is the first time I'm singing in front of a crowd? And I just saw their faces. They lost their confidence because they were thinking, okay, this is the front man. It's his first time. Now we have to really, really watch out not to. So that's how it started. And I kind of started to learn.
Part of the reason I ask you about that period for Kiosk is because I don't want to overplay this, but you know, the Persian tradition of we have to call everything, this was the greatest, you know, but I mean, you guys, there wasn't really a tradition of indie rock coming out of Iran. I mean, you know, or in the Persian space, in the Iranian space. So I'm curious partly about what that period was like for you, because I'm curious about the reaction that you would get. I mean, this was a new thing. You guys were pioneers to a certain extent. You weren't the only ones, but you were doing something that, for the most part, Iranians, even young Iranians, hadn't heard Iranians do.
Yes, and I think we were very lucky for that. There was something in the making in the undergrounds in Iran. There were a lot of bands like us. There were a lot of other people who were doing other stuff that were really interesting. But we were the lucky ones who got to get out at the right time. We got to record the way we did, and it just coincided with the iTunes being able to release albums digitally, and then just coincided with YouTube, and we made a very, 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 like, I think the money we spent for the first video was just a sandwich we bought for the friends who were there. That's the only expense we had. So we were the lucky ones, but we were not the ones that, you know, there were a lot of other bands, and it was just about to happen. It's just like the first person who invented the wheel. If he wasn't alive, somebody else would have done it. But we were the lucky one who got this break, and because of that, we made a lot of mistakes. And because of that, there was a lot of things that we were not familiar with. Like, I remember we got a lot of attention from non-Iranian media first we came out, but I was really not happy with how they handled it, how they were looking at us. It was just like, okay, these kids from Iran, these guys from Iran, they're wearing jeans, they play guitar. The Orientalism, sentimentalism, right. You know, kind of a attitude.
They were exoticizing you like a fetish or something.
Yes,
right.
Exactly. And it made me feel like you're some sort of amusement, and I didn't like that, and I didn't know how to handle that. But there was definitely opportunity to, if you had a manager, if you knew how to work these things. So we didn't know a lot of things, but it was a nice experience for us. Everything was new in a way.
Can I ask you about you guys musically, because it's very interesting. I mean, if I listen to that record from 2007, Love of Speed, and then your next couple of records as well, there's an eclectic mix of what's going on there that much more so than the average Western rock band, say. There's interesting, I would say, almost klezmer influences. I want to play a bit of To Kojai, and just so that we can hear the musical reference of what I'm talking about, let's just play a bit of that shot.
اون از ستاره این از ما، اون از شب تاریک و این از راه، این از من تنهایی بی هم سفر. تو کجایی؟ اون از غروب این از سحر، گفتی منتظرم بیا از سفر، حالا که به خونه رسیدم. تو کجایی؟ اون از زمستون این از بهار، دستای سر دل بیقرار، ای داد از غم تنهایی، ای داد از غم تنهایی تو کجایی بی تو هر روز غروبی دلیره شبای سرد من قطعی ستاره.
So folks who are familiar with, say, Yiddish klezmer music would feel like a kinship with a song like that. Tell me about the influence behind something like that being on the same record as Esh Chesorat.
This song is a new chapter of my musical journey, you know, in a way. And the next two albums kind of takes it to a different level. Then you hear the violin a lot more, you hear accordion and clarinet. And this happened, I think a couple of things played a big role in how we shifted the sound. Number one was that back when I was leaving Iran, I saw this movie Underground by Amir Kusturica, and it opened the door to music of Goran Bregovic to me and the Balkan music and all of that. And then you start to see the similarity it has with a lot of Russian tunes, a lot of Armenian, even Azeri tunes that we are familiar with, and of course the klezmer sound. And you start to kind of go and dig in deeper. But when I moved to America, I started to take guitar jazz lessons from this gypsy jazz guitarist that I also really like that style. And also started to learn a lot more about what gypsies are, who gypsies are, and where does that concept come from. And to me, those nomadic people, ever since I was a kid, were really attractive group of people. They were those and pirates. They didn't belong anywhere. They didn't own anything. Those people were really fascinating for me. And I realized the music they have and the instrumentation they have is because they can't have a big piano. They need to have small instruments. They need to be able to carry them around. So that's the sound they produce, and that's the type of melody. Because the melancholy, there's a certain hint of happiness, but at the same time it's tragic. So that type of melody, the whole instrument, everything about those kind of music comes from this cultural background and the lifestyle they have. And it's very similar to me as an immigrant who's left Iran now and don't feel I don't belong anywhere. And so it really appealed to me in that sense. So it was a journey for me to learn a lot about Greek music and all those, different type of world music that are connected to that style, and it was really fascinating.
And you didn't feel the pressure to have any kind of consistent sound, or a concern that we're throwing all these different things on the same record?
We heard a lot of negative comments from the fans who were following our music from the start, and they were surprised. But I think overall for me it was important to experience this. I didn't want to repeat myself, and it was more challenging to write in this style and these melodies that comes to your head and to play these songs. And it was more fun, honestly, it was more fun to play it live. People jump up and down and you feel the energy. But then we got over it after a while. We kind of started to lose interest, and we came back to what we started.
Over the next couple of albums, Arash, you guys really hit your stride, both musically and in terms of being known. I mean, you have a huge hit with, say, Yaram Bia becomes this big song that everybody around the world who's of Iranian background recognizes or can sing along to with you guys and your version of it. You make this curious decision in the midst of all that in 2010 to become the host of a VOA show called On 10. Why did you want to move into media and television in the middle of your burgeoning music career?
It wasn't something that I decided to do as a career move. I wanted to write, and I wanted to be involved in a production in the Iranian media, because I felt like there are so many things that I can contribute. And it was about the content, it was about the message. It wasn't about being in front of the camera or hosting a show. But when I moved to VOA and started working for VOA, things started to just evolve in a way that I ended up there. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. And even before ending up in front of the camera, I really thought about leaving VOA altogether, because I knew it was going to head that way eventually. But when I was presented with the challenge, and I felt like this is the best decision for a lot of other reasons, I took the chance, and it was a fun experience. It was you know better than anyone, I guess, because you've done this. It's a lot of pressure when you're in front of the camera. It's a totally different game when you're in front of the camera, and or being a producer behind the camera.
Yeah.
And you feel the pressure, and it starts to get into you, and you really have to be careful. You really have to be ready for it.
Yeah, and the first time I was doing it, it was also sort of a satirical kind of show to a certain extent, and you even in that context, you realize that when you're in media, as opposed to when you're doing your songs that can be allegorical or metaphorical or indirect in some ways in terms of the message or the politics, that's not necessarily available to you on camera, you know. And so I wonder if this was more of a vehicle for you in terms of wanting to affect change than you felt like your music could be.
Exactly. I thought that was the reason I joined VOA, because I thought that there is things that I can contribute to bring about change, and media is one of the best ways to do that. And I thought my music, it takes a while to record a song to get to certain people, but if you have a weekly program and you're writing for that weekly program, you can instantly convey your message to millions of people. So that's how I got started into TV and media. And honestly, I started to like the pressure. Not the pressure of being in front of the camera, because that's a different thing, but the pressure of having to meet deadlines and keep certain qualities and being on your toes all the time. So that was attractive to me. That's the type of things that I enjoy doing.
Let me segue into the politics. By the way, the pressure of doing certain things. I remember the first time I started doing TV, I realized, having been in a band for a decade, that I'd never really had a boss before. I'd never really had, I mean, when you're in a band, I mean, you have managers and, you have agents, and you got to get to the gig in time, but you're really calling the shots. You sort of, let's wake up at 10 a.m. or let's stay up till 3 a.m. and write a song or whatever it is. And all of a sudden, you're right. I mean, TV and media is all about deadlines. It's just imposed, and there's so much to navigate there for an artist that can be kind of crippling in some ways, or educational in terms of figuring out structuring your life, So I guess that was something of a shock to you as well.
True. Yeah. But it's attractive. It's very attractive.
Why is it attractive?
You start to, I don't know. It brings out my competitive side, which I don't have usually. It brings out a side of me that I feel like, can I meet this deadline? Can I do it better next time? Can I, it just engages me in a different level.
So let me ask you about politics, and because anyone who knows you or knows of you or follows you knows that you're pretty outspoken about your politics and about Iran. And you've said, I've in researching and watching some of your interviews and things you said that you believe that those of us in the diaspora have not done enough to let the people of the world know what's going on in Iran, and to support the people there, our brothers and sisters in Iran. And on the face of it, that statement just seems accurate and obvious and important, and at the same time I want to turn it on its head and say, well, why do we need to? I mean, why feel the need to be political? What if someone were to say, there's not much you can do, take care of yourself, just be a great artist, inspire people, make them happy with your music as a distraction? Why do you need to be political?
I really don't know where to start, because it has different levels. First of all, I think as a human being, we're living in a time that things can change for worse in a very drastic way, have a very, very tragic outcome if we just let it go and be indifferent and don't do anything. We see that evil, the forces of evil, I don't want to be dramatic, but we see that forces of evil just taking control over countries in the Middle East one by one, and there's so many people suffering. So as a human being, you know what's happening there, and you know how people are feeling there, and you know what the shortcomings are, and you're kind of familiar. I don't know what's happening in Senegal, I don't know what's happening in Burma, but I know what's happening in Middle East. And as a human being, I should be sensitive about it, I should be affected by it, and I should talk about it. So that's one thing.
But hang on a second, before you get to the next thing. When you use the word indifferent, is not taking political action tantamount to indifference? Is that the same thing as indifference?
Well, you don't need to be a political activist, but you need to be sensitive about it, I think. I mean, when we're doing fundraising, if you're doing a petition, if it's about calling your congressman or whatever, these are little things that anybody can do. I mean, and this is not being a political activist. It's just a citizen. It's you have freedom, you have liberty, and you have responsibilities that comes with it.
Okay.
And the second thing is about being an Iranian and being from a country that we know what kind of a background and cultural heritage has, and we know that this is not what we deserve, and we know that generation after generations in the past 40 years have been ruined by this regime, and just to be quiet because we managed to get ourselves out, and we don't care about what happens to the rest of the people there. I don't think that's fair either. So I think it's those two things always kind of play a role in me being sensitive about this.
And how much are we responsible for the predictable outcomes of the governments or the places where we do live? In other words, if I'm living in Canada or you living in Sweden, am I not responsible to what's happening down the street here in Canada, or should I still be thinking about what's happening in the streets of Iran?
Oh, definitely. You should be. I mean, you moved there, that's your new home, and you're definitely sensitive. I mean, if you're sensitive about these things, you're definitely sensitive about what's happening down the street too. But a lot of times I see on social media, people start to have differences in let's say in their host country. Like let's say two people in Toronto, they don't agree who to vote for the mayor. They're both Iranians, and over that issue, they start to fight and they start to argue about what's happening inside the country in Iran. Those are two different issues, and I think we should be able to differentiate that. And I see a lot of these days. I see a lot of fights on social media over why did you guys voted for Biden or why didn't you vote for Trump?
Right.
And this is a different story from what's happening. So I know they're connected, but it's still
there's something else that happens with social media too, which I mean was sort of cheekily called slacktivism a few years ago, but it's the idea that people feel like they're contributing by making their Instagram black for a day, or putting up a meme that and so now I've done my thing and I've contributed to change in Iran, and one wonders what effect that really has. How do you feel about that?
I think it helps. I think it raises awareness. I think if you look back at the social media, let's say Twitter, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, the mood in Twitter, Farsi Twitter, Persian Twitter in particular, you couldn't say certain things. Certain political views were not questionable. You couldn't question certain people. And gradually, a lot of users started to talk about these things. And eventually, we see today that it has changed totally, 100%. 5 years ago on Instagram, if you posted something political, nobody would even see it. But these days, you see a lot more of those. So it raises awareness. And then when you have the political, and when you have the public opinion and social media, like on Twitter, when there's a campaign, you see that it makes a change. A lot of times, even governments in Iran, they react. They issue a statement or they change a decision over some things. So they kind of monitor that. I think it helps. We can't dismiss it like that.
So once again, in terms of the responsibility that you believe we should share, and I'm not suggesting I disagree with you, but I just want to put it out there. So, I mean, Iranians have been through so much, right? Whether you're political or not, they've been through so much. And so if there's an Iranian woman who says, look, it was hard enough to get out of the country. My cousin was, died in the war. I know someone who was executed. I've come here now to Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I just want to be a dentist. And I don't want to have anything to do with all of that. Do you begrudge them that choice?
No, I understand that. I understand a lot of people take that position, and it's their personal choice. A lot of people become hypocrite if you don't care about politics and you just stop worrying and you just move on. That's one thing. But if you say I don't care about politics, but the minute you see that there's a wave, there's a coolness of, like, let's say Black Lives Matter or things like that you feel like you have to be part of this because it gives you identity. Back to the discussion we had about the movie,
right? Then
you jump on the wagon. That's a different story, and I don't like that. But again, that's a personal choice too. So it's just my personal preference. I don't like it.
And what about the role of artists and cultural figures, Arash? You've talked about, I really thought this was interesting. At some point you brought up South Africa as an example. South Africa of the 1980s. Those of us who were alive at that time, even those of us who were the kids, we remember this, how artists came together to bring attention to what was happening in South Africa. What do you believe, which was apartheid, of course, what do you believe we can learn from that example, from that experience?
I think what happened was that the artists, they started to be more vocal about what was going on in South Africa. They raised awareness in their own societies, in different countries in Europe, in America. They started talking about racism, apartheid. And with the concerts, all the bands were sensitive about this. And it became expensive, it became costly for a politician to have ties or defend policies that supported South Africa, because now everybody was aware of what was happening in South Africa. And so the local politicians started to change their attitude. And then eventually decision makers and politicians, they started to kind of take this seriously because they knew it would affect their votes. And I think that's what we should do about what's happening in Iran and the Middle East here in the West, to raise awareness, to engage people, to let them know that this is not what Iranians are like. I mean, this is not what we deserve. And there's a crime happening there, and you should be aware of this. And this politician that you voted for is cooperating with them, and you should not vote for him next time, or question him, or things like that. And I think that's a model we should follow.
Let me ask you about the impact of cultural repression in the last, particularly in the last 40 years. You've talked about the fact that you believe that there really haven't been any Iranian artists or cultural figures who have produced much of anything worthy of big international attention or acclaim in the last 40 years as a product of that repression. Can you speak to that?
I think there's a misunderstanding between a lot of Iranian artists when they talk about limitations and repression. I hear that a lot of artists say, because of the limitations we have in this country, we become more creative, especially when it comes to filmmakers. In cinema, they say Iranian cinema is so good because there's censorship. I just can't understand that. I understand that limitation starts to define your artistic flexibility in a way, or define what techniques you can use to express yourself as an artist. But it's never a good thing, especially if it's forced upon you, especially if it's forced upon you by government. And I think that's what I'm trying to say. And I think when it comes to Iranian culture and what we have done in the last 40 years, what we have produced as an idea, as a new idea, and given it to the world, I don't see much. I don't see anything very brilliant.
I think I disagree with you on the film thing. I think I do agree that sometimes, not that it's allowed to flourish necessarily, but that sometimes putting boundaries or that type of suppression, not just in Iran, but in general, in suppressed societies, can create the conditions where an artist has to find a way around it and ends up doing something incredibly innovative. But obviously I understand what you mean in general. Do you think that cultural repression runs through the manifestation of it being that, as you've said, that there's nothing you believe worthy that has come out of that? Then do you believe that runs into the DNA of those of us of Iranian descent who are outside of Iran? I mean, are you suggesting that Iranian artists, people of Iranian descent who are artists, say in the US or in England or in Canada, suffer because of that cultural repression in our homeland over the last 4 decades? No, I don't think so. I think it traumatizes us, definitely, so that that will have an impact on our work. But it's not in our DNA, and I think it's just it's a big barrier. It's just a big obstacle in being creative and innovative. But I think once you have the freedom and once you feel that you're connected to, you're not isolated anymore, and you can express yourself however you want. And there are a lot of Iranian successful artists outside of the country who are saying things and doing stuff that are really current and really, they're really relevant to what's happening in the world, not just Iran. You understand what I'm trying to say? I understand what you're trying to say. Yeah, I appreciate it. Okay, let's circle back to where we started, and I want to finish with Sweet Destiny. Before we get there, all of the different things that you do and the different personalities of Arash Sobhani. I mean, one of the things you've done in recent years is to be the producer of Persia's Got Talent. I'm trying to reconcile that guy with the guy who's just been talking for the last 10 minutes, who's very serious about wanting to create change and the kind of dialogue that you've been having. What do you get out of that, out of the TV production side of what you do?
Yeah, I mean, when I was offered to do this project, I thought to myself, oh my God, entertainment is so difficult, and I'm not such an entertaining person. I wonder how I can pull it off, and how can I really connect with this project? Because I wasn't a fan of like these entertainment shows. I never watched a lot of entertainment shows before moving to Europe. And when I was offered to do this, and I started to plan for it, and I started to think, okay, and where can I find these people, and where can I do this, and all these problems started to kind of like suck me in. And when I started to actually go into the interviews to find these talents, we went to 10 cities, I think, and these people showed up to show us their talent. So it was a pre-interview thing. And I started to get to know these people. I realized how emotional this show was, and how deep it was, because all these guys, we were doing this show outside of the country. This was the only Got Talent show that was being shot outside the country. And so you had to go and find these people. A lot of them are refugees. And all of them have a unique story, and all of them have unique talents, and you just start to connect with them and become emotionally involved in a different level, that it's not entertainment anymore. And it was such an interesting experience for me, and I learned so much, and it became such a joyride in a way that each different person, you wanted for all of them to win. You liked all of them, and you knew all their stories, because you had to do interviews, we had to set up stories for them and all of that. It was an amazing experience, and it was totally different from what any entertainment show or any game show has been.
Do you think you're going to do more of the TV or the producing in TV?
Yeah, I think I enjoy the work environment and the whole setup. I like that. But I also want to do more films if possible, if I'm given the chance, and music, of course.
Let me come back to the film Sweet Destiny. What is your greatest hope of what will come of this project?
I didn't start it with a goal. I started as telling a story. But what I would like to get out of it right now is for people to see it. I want it to be seen. I want it to get exposure, and I want people to start talking about it and to start talking about the issue. And I hopefully want to see more bands doing things like this, and more artists dedicating their work to causes like this. So that's my hope, if I'm not being too cliche.
You know, I usually, to speak in cliches, a prototypical question that one would ask someone like you at the end of an interview like this is, are you hopeful about the future of Iran, or whether change can come? But I may take a stab at answering the question, and you can tell me if I'm right or not. I tend to believe that someone like you, who spends the amount of time, passion, and sweat making a film when it's not the right business model of the moment, about capital punishment in Iran, throwing your music and your artistry in there and really wanting to amplify the voice around that. I believe someone like you really is ultimately an optimist, that you believe hope can happen, that you believe change is possible. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing all that. Am I right?
That's true. That's very true, especially with what I see today in Iran. I mean, it's about the new generation that are really, really energetic, objective. They know what they want, and they seem to be a lot more experienced than we were when we were their age. So I'm hopeful with them, and I hope that we see change very soon. I tell the story to almost anybody who asks me this question, and I'm sure that you've had the similar story when you were in Berlin. You get in a cab, and most of the time you start talking about the wall. A lot of times you start talking about the wall and how was it? Were you here? Were you living here when it happened? And lot of times you hear them say yes until 24 hours before the collapse of the wall. Nobody would have thought of it. So it's just like that. So I hope that we live to see that day soon.
Arash Sobhani, I appreciate the time, the perspective, your candor, and I thank you very much for doing this today.
Thanks so much. I really enjoyed this.
Bye-bye, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Arash Sobhani, a member of the band Kiosk, an Iranian musician, TV host, and producer who's played a role in the breaking the mold of what is defined as the Iranian sound. He's just released Payana Shirin, Sweet Destiny, the first ever musical in Iranian cinema. You can hear the related album on Spotify, watch it on YouTube. Arash Sobhani joined us from San Francisco, California today.
نقاشی و تابلوهای به اون قشنگی همه رو بردا ببر به من نمیاد بردا ببر چیزی نمونده دیگه از این رابطه روزنامه یه کهنه و لامپای سوخته اونا رم بردا ببر یه چیزی بین ما بود که حالا میگی دیگه نیست غیر اون واسه من چیزی دیگه مهم نیست بقیه‌شو بردا ببر گیتارم بردا ببر یاد اون روزا از ذهنم پاک نمیشه خاطر تو چمدون جا نمیشه اگه نمیگفتم اونم بردا ببر چمدونم بردا ببر چیزی جو
There you go. From 2011 and the record Triple Distilled. A little bit of Kiosk, Arash Sobhani, and the song Varda Bebar. Nice choice, Shaya. Nice choice.
I love that.
Oh, you like that?
It's got a good vibe to it.
You know, it sounds like
different.
Dire Straits.
I have no idea what that is.
Well, now you know who they are.
I don't know what that is. But it's got that gypsy kind of like cool, I don't know. And I love his voice.
Gypsy.
I don't know. You know that violin sound?
The
it kind of sounds
sound
very...
that we discussed.
Yeah, I love it. I really
That's
love
a
it.
great. That is a great song. And the microphones are back on for Captain Reza, Groovy Shaya, and the fabulous Keon. Arash Sobhani.
He's extremely politically outspoken. Like,
Yes.
Because I got to know Arash when we interviewed him for Pink Floyd originally.
Yes.
Before that, I wasn't really aware of his music. But and then
Really, you didn't know
no,
Kiosk when you were
no,
coming up?
No,
Right.
I didn't. Because it was like when I just moved to
That's
Canada.
right. You had already come to Canada. Yeah.
And I was trying to listen to like consume as much as English content
Right.
as possible. So
Right.
I didn't listen to him, but he's not listening to every he doesn't have one song that is not political, does he? Like every.
No, there's some love songs.
Yeah. Like this one, Varda Bebar is what
I thought this was about migration and like.
No, it's about
like
the fight between. I can imagine it was about the fight between him and like his partner, and like همه چی رو Varda Bebar.
Interesting, because I thought like it
you
was
were projecting that onto it.
I know
Captain Reza.
now that like I listened to it like before that as well. Like when I research him, every song of his that I listen to, I'm like, oh, this means this, and I'm reading like way too much, and I'm like, this is political as well.
No, but no, I don't think everything he does at all is. There's been many songs that aren't directly sort of political, but it's interesting that it's in direct contrast to some recent guests we've had that have directly said, look, I'm an artist, I don't need to be political, and even I speak by being an artist, or I speak by that's what I do, you know. So it's interesting to have Arash say that he really believes everybody should be they should be using their platform. If you're outside of Iran and you're not making your voice heard politically, that he's taking issue with that, and that's very interesting.
I agree with him, actually. I take issue with people that have the platform to really help their people, and especially in our culture, we have a lot of effed up issues that we need to voice and grab attention from the general public. So to have a platform and not use it for the good of the people, it's very hard for me to digest that. So I'm on the side of Arash. I think it's your public duty to some extent. You can't just keep your mouth shut completely while your people are getting murdered on the street.
But on the other hand, if you're a female singer who's spent your life fighting to just be a female singer, and you're now in the diaspora and you're a Persian female singer, for example, even just being that person is kind of on the cutting edge to a certain extent, let alone having to, I mean, why shouldn't that person have the right to say, look, I don't want to get involved politically. I just want to do my work, and I want to be an artist and lead by being an artist.
I mean, to each their own, but it's not even a political issue at some points of time. Usually it's a human rights issue, and that it's very hard for me to see that when I see someone like that has so many followers, so much publicity, yet they don't voice anything.
I mean, for example, I'm talking about myself. I'm not that kind of person who writes a political song or
right, that's not your style.
Yes, but because the female cannot sing in Iran, I choose to work with female singers. So it's my political act, it's my kind of rebellious act.
But there's also, I mean, I remember we had this debate around Parviz Tanavoli, who chooses to not be particularly political, and I just think there is a lead, and certainly this has come up with Asghar Farhadi recently, when a lot of Iranians around the world were taking umbrage at the fact that he had not more directly spoken out about atrocities or things going on in Iran when he was celebrated at the Cannes Film Festival. But with these guys, I mean, given the stereotypes and the negative images of Iranians and sort of ideas that people continue to have in the West, I just feel like Parviz Tanavoli, being an amazing sculptor that is globally renowned, and that people and a beautiful human who speaks so in such lovely ways, and isn't that a great example for our community to the world? Does he also need to be holding a placard and be saying he opposes something or other?
I don't know. I guess I can't answer that. To each their own. Like
well, your answer is that's not enough. You think he needs to be political?
No, I mean, everybody has their own reasons. I guess I'm just saying that if I were in the same position, I couldn't sit back and not say anything. It would be very hard for me to sit back and watch my people get killed and murdered and just awful atrocities happening in my country and just not voice an opinion on that. I can't.
Yeah, and you're voicing your opinion here. Yeah. And it could get you in trouble sometimes.
It could, maybe. It was sometimes within the team even.
Yeah. Well, I guess you don't want to go to Iran and get a nose job now, Kian?
No, I'll just go to Turkey. It's okay. Which also arguably could be just as bad. But anyway.
Did you, now your nose job, Reza, did you get it in Iran or outside of Iran?
Where was
You do have a fine nose, though.
He has the nose. There's no nose that looks more like it's been nose jobbed than Reza's, and yet how do we know? Maybe
we don't know.
If you can actually prove that I got a nose job, I will pay for your nose job.
Okay, let's take him to a plastic.
That's actually worth it to me to try and find out exactly where you got your nose job.
Examine me. Put me through X-ray.
I feel like it's too late for me to get a nose job. I should have done it years ago.
And I think
I've done something about this huge, monstrosity.
It's not even that okay. Well, from certain angles, from the side, it's not so bad. But then he turns an angle, and I'm like,
and there's a shadow cast over half the room.
But
the truth is, it isn't that big now because the rest of me has gotten larger. I tell you, I've told you before. When I was a kid. I mean, I was, 1/4 of the size I am now, and I was super skinny, but my nose was exactly the same size as it is now. I mean, people were just like, in the Austin Powers movies where Fred Savage has like a big mole or something on his chin, and they said, "Don't look at the mole." Whatever. Like people were like that with my nose. They're like, don't mention his nose.
Nosy.
Hey, shout out to Arash Sobhani, but also Arash and Anita Fazalipur, the founders of MyTerms.ca, a successful mortgage company in Ontario, Canada. They believe in educating their clients to understand every aspect of the financing being obtained, and they see each transaction through from beginning to end to make sure they are closed with ease. If you're looking for a mortgage in the Toronto or Greater Ontario region, go to myterms.ca, myterms one word.ca. They're among the best, and both Arash and Anita make it a priority to give back to the Persian community. Big thanks to them and myterms.ca. Also a big thank you again to Kati Kavandi and Kati Kavandi Immigration Services Incorporated for making this edition of Rook possible. This is a full-service immigration firm that offers all inland and overseas immigration services, including temporary visas, permanent visas, PR extensions, citizenship applications. Kati and her team are available to inform and assist you as their client throughout the whole immigration process. If you want to come to Canada or you are here and need support, you need an immigration counselor, Kati is your person. Kavandi.ca, Kati Kavandi Immigration Services. All right. Keon, I think we got you ready? You got your all right. It's Monday. It's Letters of the Week.
Yeah. Not bad.
Wasn't your best, for sure. All right. Last week on episode 145, we had Hamid Saidi on the show. He's a santoor master, a composer, and a Grammy Award winner with his group Opium Moon. Plus, we had broadcaster Behzad Bulur and recording artist Azam Ali join us at the Rook Roundtable, where we discussed the late Abbas Chaminara and his legendary music stores, Beethoven Music in Tehran and Music Box in Los Angeles. So we have Zoya Katuli wrote to us saying, I love their music. I downloaded it on my music app. It's so different and very relaxing. It suits my mood. Thanks, Jianjan and Rook team. And she's referencing Opium Moon.
That's right. I was going to say that. Yeah, the music of Opium Moon. Yeah.
That's right. And then we have Husheng Academy. Husheng Academy wrote to us saying, Gold Chain, Santoor, and now Ustad Hamid playing this instrument in a heavenly way. I would say his mom is well alive and will stay so in his beautiful music. Thank you, Rook Media, for this conversation.
Nice. Thank you, Husheng.
And then we have username Almond Blossom wrote saying, this episode was excellent and I loved it. After listening to this episode and getting to know Abbas Chaminara, I am proud to be Iranian. Good luck, Rook team.
Nice. That's nice.
We have a few general letters that came in about no specific episode. We have a Arash JB.
By the way, I should mention, somebody was saying to me, they just discovered that we sometimes read out as letters things that are posted on YouTube and Instagram and things like that, or SoundCloud. So you can, in other words, we don't just read letters that are sent to us in our info@Rook Media mailbox. So yes, you can send us a letter at info@rookmedia.com, but by all means post on YouTube or Instagram where we see all of that, and you factor that in when you're reading the letters, right?
Yeah, that's right. So we have Arash JB. I believe he sent us a message on Instagram, personal message. He sent us this saying, awesome job, everyone. Great podcast. I'm recommending it to all my friends and colleagues. Very nice. Thank you, Arash. Just a note, I tried to become a patron, but my card was declined at my band side. I couldn't do it again as it showed pending. Also, I noticed that I cannot unsubscribe or reverse being a patron to redo it. Please check to see if the option works. Who's responsible for this?
We'll check that.
Someone needs to check this out.
That would be Thoughtful Nagin.
But we'll get that checked out. But thank you,
Wait,
JB.
I'm not done.
I just want to say thanks for trying to become a patron.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. At rookmedia.com, where you can become a patron.
I can give him my account.
Send it to Shaya.
Arash goes on saying, again, amazing podcast. Nice sections, good blend of different topics, talks, questions, etc. I did my whole renovation listening to your voices. Also, I like the dynamics between you guys. Great job. Wow, that's very sweet.
What happens when the renovation is done?
Then
no more
you
Rook.
Start something else. Right. You start a new project. Right. All right, well, it's time for Letter of the Week.
Oh!
Okay, as I already mentioned, this letter is pretty great. Like, it's a very heartwarming, emotional, beautiful, just all of it wrapped into one little teddy bear. Firuze Hashemi emailed us saying, "Hello, Jian and Rook team. What a great group you guys are. I look forward to each episode and can't keep up. Thank you for everything you guys do. Our family was one of the first Iranian families in Canada over 50 years ago. I was born here and my Iranian Shanasnameh is number 2. Wow. So that's how few of us there were back then. My father has great stories to tell of his migration here to Canada. One famous story he tells is back then when there were hardly any Iranians in Canada. One day when a friend of his said he heard there is an Iranian family living in Kitchener, Ontario, he packs his wife and 3 small children in the car late at night and travels there just to see a fellow Iranian family. He has so many other great stories too. Anyway, it's so nice to see you guys are all bringing Iranians closer these days with your wonderful program. Keep up the great work. Would love to meet you all in person one day. You are such an entertaining group. Take care and Mizun Bashin." Is that not the most beautiful letter? I almost want to hear more of these stories. It's pretty incredible. One of the first Iranian families here in Canada.
Firuze Hashemi. That is just beautiful. Thank you so much. And she says she would like to meet all of us in person one day. I think that would be lovely.
Yeah.
You know, for just $20. If you become a patron,
you can buy our love.
Now, here's what it is. If you become a patron for $20, you can meet either me, Shaya, or Keon, and for just $5, you can meet Reza. If you don't want to pony up to the $20,
and you don't have to pay $5. You'll get $5.
He'll pay you.
Yeah,
he needs friends.
I need human contact.
If you need $5,
I just need to say hello to someone.
Okay.
Man with the most
Reza,
perfect nose in the
last show.
Someone actually mentioned that we make fun of Reza too much, but it's all love.
I know, because he's the best.
Yeah. If you saw his face, you would make fun of him too.
Take crap all over me, and then at the end, he's the best. He's the best. Oh, you get your nose job. All right, let's wrap it up, guys.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Firuze, for that lovely letter, and thanks to everybody for listening today. This is Full Time for Rook for today. Remember to find all things Rook, our episodes, our guests, our videos, our links to different projects. Rookmedia.com is the website, rookmedia.com. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together. Thoughtful Nagin, the fabulous Keon, Super Patty Saw, producer Susan Ponta, the artist Savvy Roham, sponsorship Sean, Aray Mehrdad, Captain Reza, and Groovy Shaya. Thank you to all of you out there for supporting us and sharing our content. Please subscribe if you've not done so already on any of our platforms, like wherever you're listening to us right now. The subscription part is free. Just press subscribe, and so we can end up in your mailbox more often. Find me on Facebook or Instagram at Jian Ghomeshi. Thanks to the whole team. Mizun Bashi.